Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychedelic Tech, Consciousness in the Modern Age. My name is Scarlett Macius. I am head of community for Tactogen, which is a public benefit corporation developing novel entactogens to help create transformative medicine for mental wellness. I am also on the board of North Star, which is focused on business ethics in the psychedelic ecosystem. And part of the reason why I'm moderating this panel is prior to joining Tactogen, I ran a creative consultancy focused on virtual and hybrid events, bringing together community through art experiencing in the digital age. I am joined by three incredible panelists who I will introduce. And this panel is incredibly exciting because it's talking about the zeitgeist of our era, this integration of tech and psychedelics, and where we're moving as we're telescoping technology further and further towards this question of what it means to be human, what it means to have consciousness, and how we find balance in all of it is captivating. And this is to say also that this is just the beginning of a discourse. It's not the finality, so encouraging all of you to move forward in these conversations after this panel. So first, at the end, we have Dr. Jeffrey Becker, who directs development of ketamine and next-generation psychedelic formulations for precision medicine treatments as the Chief Science Officer of Bexon Biomedical. He has over 20 years of research and clinical experience in MDMA receptor pharmacology and clinical use, being one of the first MDs in the US administering ketamine for depression in the clinic. He has over 10 years of experience training clinicians in ketamine protocols and ketamine-assisted therapy, and is a world-recognized speaker translating neurobiologic processes that produce the variation between ketamine and psychedelic transcendence. He trained at UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute in both medicine and psychiatry, with a focus on neuropsychiatry, neurology, and integrative and holistic medicine. Next, we have Sunny Strasberg, LMFT. She is a psychedelic entrepreneur, trainer, consultant, writer, and licensed psychotherapist. Mrs. Strasberg is an EMDR certified trauma specialist, certified in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, and trained in internal family systems. She is a graduate of the certification for psychedelic-assisted therapy from the California Institute of Integral Studies. She is certified in ketamine, MDMA, and psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy. Sunny is the clinical director of Trip PsyAssist, developing virtual reality and mobile app psychedelic support. She offers ketamine therapy retreats, presentations, and trainings, which she co-leads with Dr. Richard Schwartz, creator of Internal Family System. She was a senior trainer at the KTC with Bessel van der Kolk and other leaders in the trauma and psychedelic-assisted therapy space, and she has developed original protocols utilizing psychedelic-assisted therapy. And then finally, last but not least, Brandon Good is an entrepreneur in the mental health and wellness industry. He founded Houston, a microdosing companion app, and is currently working on a new project that he co-founded called Outro, a digital health solution for evidence-based antidepressant deprescribing. Prior to founding these companies, Brandon worked in business development and partnership functions for Field Trip Health and Novo Nordisk. Let's give a hand for our panelists. So I know that everyone here would love to learn more about what you're working on and why it excites you. Would love to start with Brandon.
Okay, this is loud. Thank you. Nice to see everyone. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. So, yeah, I'm Brandon Good. I'm from Toronto. A lot less credentials than these two. My imposter syndrome is starting to exist. No, I'm just kidding. So what I've been working on, I guess why I'm here is I was working in the psychedelic space for a while and saw microdosing really catching on as the most accessible entry point to psychedelics for the general population. I found with my background, growing up in a suburb of Toronto, mixed, half Jamaican, half British Canadian, psychedelics weren't really understood by a lot of my community, including age group, demographic, income status, etc. And microdosing was an area that people were asking a lot about. And I thought, how could you use technology in an intelligent way to build a scalable solution that could introduce people to the concepts of set and setting through a responsible method of psychedelic use, I suppose. Let's say not scaling using an app while tripping, but introducing that through intentional microdosing. So that's what we built with Houston. And then while building Houston, I learned that people were having a really difficult time getting off of antidepressants. So I was doing, user research. Obviously, when building an app, that's what you do. And I kept hearing that people were microdosing to get off antidepressants, whether that's LSD, psilocybin. And then when I launched the product on Instagram, on social media, started getting DMs saying, "Oh, I've been on Prozac for 20 years. I hate it, but I can't get off it. Can I microdose to get off my antidepressant?" And this came up time and time again, and I was like, I don't know. There's no evidence for that. It's probably not good to mix two serotonergic drugs together. Two, I had never been on an antidepressant, so I thought to myself, wait, you can't just stop them when you're feeling better. And three, it's why don't you go to your primary prescriber to help you get off the antidepressant? And that happened enough times where it kind of a light bulb went off after a particular user interview, and I thought to myself, all right, the fact that fairly normal people are going on to Instagram to a random brand asking about microdosing a currently illegal substance, that sounds like a gap in healthcare to me. So why not build something that can help people transition off these medications and onto more holistic, sustainable methods of well-being? And it's a big rabbit hole, what pharma's done to create lifetime customers there. I learned that at my time in Novo Nordisk, working on the infamous drug that's taking over this country called Ozempic. So yeah, we can dive into that later. But that's why I'm here, is I'm really interested to share my thoughts on technology and not just psychedelics and consciousness, but what it means to be well and how technology can help us get there. These wonderful people, and how it's really a finger point. Technology is a finger pointing at something, right? It's not the thing being pointed at.
Thank you so much. Jeff, would love to hear from you next.
My name's Jeffrey Becker, and again, CSO at Bexon Biomedical. I worked for about 20 years with ketamine in clinical practice, using it for depression, for trauma, and what I was able to observe was how effective it was for pain. A lot of people that come into the office with psychiatric conditions a lot of times have a lot of underlying physical issues as well, and pain is a big problem in human beings in general. About 5 years ago, I realized that if we could hack ketamine's chemistry and make a subcutaneous form of ketamine that was tolerable to the tissue, we could deliver ketamine for pain management, in acute pain management, chronic pain management, hospice pain management, cancer pain management, and solve one of the big problems that we have in the United States and really in the world, which is we've been in a 200-year death grip with opioids. They're the only potent pain management option for doctors. People ask, why do we keep prescribing this? Because there's nothing else to prescribe. If you have a total knee replacement, you need pain management. There's no question about it. You've sawed off bones on both sides of your leg. It's just excruciating. So there is literally only one answer that I know of, at least, that actually has the potency of opioids for pain management, and that's ketamine. The problem is ketamine's kind of like salty orange juice. So if you put that into this tissue, you can imagine it irritates the tissue, creates something called a sterile abscess. So that was what we had to solve. In the process of solving that chemistry, it turned out we made a new pharmaceutical salt, and we just received patent protection for that pharmaceutical salt for application to any molecule under the sun. And we've taken that protocol and we've applied it to psychedelics, antibiotics, antivirals, movement disorder molecules, tryptan drugs. Basically, we've played this out across about 40 to 50 different scaffolds. Actually, Jason Wallach over there is our chemist, absolute genius. And this salt was his idea, and we've taken and run with it. So at this point, we are now looking at the application of precision psychedelics to avoid the GI tract, allow doctors to dose tune to patients in real time in the office. It's one of the advantages of ketamine is that you can give people the amount of ketamine that they need in the office in real time. You have complete control over flight. So you can get them up into the area that you want them, and you know when they're going to come back down. Currently, oral dosing of psychedelics just does not offer that at all, actually. We have huge interpatient variability because of first-pass metabolism. You have GI side effects like nausea, vomiting, malaise. This was a big issue, 23% nausea and vomiting in the COMPASS trial with psilocybin. If you've taken mushrooms, you know nausea is an issue. And that's just really not a precision product to have people have that much nausea in an office to the level where you need to have a bucket next to them and that kind of thing. So we are hoping and that we will be moving towards applying this technology to the psychedelics as well. We have developed a wearable pump system where it's in development. This is a non-working unit, but the idea would be you pull off the stickum, you put it on, and you press go. It's got a bolus button as well so that we can deliver a steady state, but we can also dose a tune. So this, you can imagine, could be basically an ayahuasca pump that would allow you not to need an MAO inhibitor because you're not going by the gut. You can deliver the amount of DMT or another short half-life powerful psychedelic that is broken down by MAO. Another example would be 5-methoxy-DMT. So I really, really value precision. As a doctor, I've been a neurohacker for 20 years, and I believe that we're moving into an era where that level of precision is really going to be expected of the psychedelic industry. I think ultimately, if there is product differentiation, oral dosing of psychedelics will be dead pretty quick if we have alternatives.
Thank you. Sunny, love to hear from you.
Thanks. I'm sitting here and thinking how honored I am to be sitting with compassionate people on the panel. It seems like we're all driven by compassion, yeah? I've been a trauma therapist for a long time, and I'll make this relevant to why I'm here at the panel, on the panel. In 2020, I have a ketamine clinic in Salt Lake, and I do a lot of therapy with it, internal family systems and EMDR and other modalities interwoven in it. And in 2020, I was seeing an uptick of people coming into my clinic that were needing help integrating their underground psychedelic experiences and making sense of what they experienced. And also people who are going to ketamine clinics that, you know, in a strip mall somewhere where there was no therapy at all, and they were just, you know, going in and getting ketamine and then coming out. And it brought up a lot of unconscious material for them, sometimes repressed trauma, and they didn't know how to integrate that. And because therapy is expensive, a lot of people couldn't afford to pay a therapist to help support them, right? And I'm all about accessibility and accessibility for psychedelics, and I'm really passionate about that. So my long-term time friend, David Starfire, who's an incredible music producer in the psychedelic space, he and I got together and started talking about creating playlists and support for people going through ketamine with voice guidance, meditations and voice guidance that I would author and read to people, and then integration support as they came out of the journey, so that they could feel like they had some kind of support. So instead of, you know, a TV blaring HGTV in the background and no music, they would have beautiful music that would help them through the trajectory of their journey. And in 2021, we were acquired by Trip and were brought on board, and Trip's team is absolutely amazing. They're the largest and fastest XR technology company in the space and have over 7 million uses. So it was so exciting to join the team and become the clinical director there and really make our offering much more robust. And so we've taken it from the beginnings of a mobile app to creating a beautiful virtual reality experience and a mobile app that supports that experience. So right now we're conducting a study at Kadima Neuropsychiatry in San Diego with Dr. David Feifel's team, looking at if we can use this one component of this project to reduce anxiety prior to a ketamine experience. So it's about a 20-minute meditation, guided visualization with beautiful graphics that the TRIP team has created, and voice guidance that I've authored, that's clinically appropriate for people going into ketamine experiences, and guiding them through and helping them breathe. There's this beautiful visual of, in one part of it, where these particles come out from the universe and flow into your nose as you're inhaling, and then flow out of your nose. So it's this beautiful experience. And we're looking at if that will help reduce anxiety prior to the ketamine experience, right? I'm really excited about this study. And then we're going to be going to beta at some point this year, and clinics will be using this and giving us feedback about this product. So that's something I'm really excited about with technology and psychedelics. And in other news, I'm doing a lot of trainings and presentations with Dr. Richard Schwartz this year, looking at how internal family systems can best support psychedelic experiences. I think weaving really wonderful therapy in with psychedelics for integration is very, very powerful and potentiates the value that we get from these medicines. And I have a book coming out this summer I'm really excited about, in a couple of months, about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So those are the things that I'm excited about. And I'm really excited about being here with y'all today, too.
Yeah, it's so wonderful having you. And it's clear that you have so much passion for weaving art and music into the psychedelic experience in these innovative ways. And I'm wondering if you have any further thoughts on the influence of creative expression for expanding the understanding of a person's consciousness psychedelic experience, and how through the avenue of VR that can help support one on that journey.
That's great. I had a journey recently myself where I came out thinking about how, how everything in this side of reality, in this waking reality, is based on money and material things and owning things and social hierarchy, right? Being social animals that we are. And in the psychedelic space, it's completely inverted, where what matters most is compassion and love and understanding and art and music, yeah? And that's the most beautiful commodity in that space. And we're so inspired when we're in those spaces to try to bring something back from that world to this world, right? And because psychedelic experiences are ineffable, no words can capture the depth of the mystical experience. We want to create something when we come back that's not about words, right? It's about art and music. So it has inspired me immensely in my creative life, and I'm a painter with my husband. We collaborate on paintings, and it's really changed the way that I create. And music is so integral to the psychedelic experience. Music is one of the healing components of the experience. The pacing, the emotional tone of the music. And so it's been really fun to co-create with David Starfire and think about how we can best support a journey and curate a journey in a direction toward healing. It's nonverbal, but it's very, very powerful. And then adding this component of VR is so interesting to me. Anecdotally, I've been using it in my clinic prior to ketamine experiences for my patients. And it's very interesting how this immersive VR experience, it's very beautiful, and with all of these, it's a psychedelic experience in and of itself, without any psychedelics on board, that seems to stimulate the visual cortex. And then when people go into the ketamine experience, it weaves itself into the hallucinations. It's almost like the psyche wants to riff off of what it just experienced. And I'm really curious about that and excited about that. I wonder what that will be like as we explore more and more, interweaving some visual guidance, much like music, into the psychedelic experience. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah.
And with your weaving into metaverse context and VR, we have such beautiful representation here. Jeff, you're more on the hardware side in the development of tech, and I'd love to get more nuanced with you on your philosophies around precision, this development of this and other hardware, and how it can help in creating safe containers for experiencing psychedelics.
Thank you. That's a big subject. I want to do a shout out. It's been amazing to meet everybody here, and I think what is interesting about all of us is that there is a platform kind of component to everything that everybody's doing. Sonny, I think, and Brandon, I think we've got a lot of legs with what you're both doing, and that's kind of what's interesting about solving a specific problem that you identify in the world. What ends up happening if you do this kind of methodical work to do it right, you end up creating something that has platform potential. For me, I have always seen the brain as a metabolic organ. In cardiology, in liver medicine, we see these organs as metabolic organs. And then for some reason, when we get into psychiatry, we forget about that and we kind of just apply medications to behavioral patterns. I think that we're moving out of that area, hopefully, and bringing a much more precise understanding of the way that the brain works, the way the brain ages, the way the brain contains information and stereotypes information. A lot of people probably know about the default mode network and the salience network and the executive networks. What those mean essentially is that certain parts of your brain are talking to other parts of your brain more commonly than other areas of the brain. And what we know is those stereotyped patterning, that patterning that happens can become overwrought, it can become over-contained. When you work with people with depression, it's fascinating to actually hear the same thing over and over again. They'll tell you that they're having the same 5 thoughts all day long. It's kind of a form of hell, actually, when things get overly constricted like that. So I firmly believe that the pathway to healing for many conditions in the human body, not just mental health conditions, but even physical health conditions, is breaking patterning. But if we're going to apply these medications in a kind of calculated way, we're going to roll them out and have them be accessible for a wider audience, kind of not the psychonaut, self-starter, people that read, self-educated, but come in and they need to be kind of moved into the space. I think precision is going to be extremely, extremely important. It's not just about medical costs and medical economics. That's a big factor, and I think that if we don't address that, we're not going to actually have products that work in the system that exists in the United States. We can try to change the system, but that's the system. I'm working within the system that exists right now. So the delivery of these molecules to the target tissue at the dose that you want in the time frame that you want. That's what I mean by precision. And that is essentially not really possible with most of the current models that are out there. There are companies that are developing IV delivery, but the problem there is that psychiatry really needs to be brought back into the fold. There are problems with psychiatry. I'm a psychiatrist. I can tell you all about them and what the problems are in psychiatry. But we've been kind of shut out in some ways of the ketamine model because it's IV, and psychiatrists don't do IVs. And that is just a massive problem in terms of kind of recruiting the expertise of the doctors that are trained for years, 4 years in post-medical training in residency on mental health. So we want to bring them back into the fold. We have a big issue right now with anesthesiologists, ER doctors who are delivering ketamine and really honestly have almost no, they have a little bit of mental health training. I mean, you can't get through medicine without some of it, but there's a huge missing piece. If we're going to really integrate this whole system and work into addressing the spirit in psychiatry, we have to create products that work for psychiatrists.
I think you're highlighting something important in this, like with the evolution of tech that we've seen, something that should continue to happen as we're considering the integration of psychedelic experiences is this broadening, this opportunity to broaden the global community. And Brandon, this is what you've been working on with Houston, where you've, through the app, opened up this global community for the avenue of microdosing, and for, in that context of precision and personalized care, people being able to track their own experiences and connect with others. And I think we take for granted, for those of us who've existed in the ecosystem for a while, that for those who are existing in rural spaces and don't necessarily have the community connection that some of us in this room have, that before the advent of some of these technologies, that it was borderline impossible for people to seek out others who could understand them. So the question then is, like, with these virtual containers, with this app and platform, what do you see and what are your thoughts on a person's opportunity to be supported during their psychedelic experience and in the integration process with this global opening of community?
Yeah. I think I might start with a definition first. So the idea of, like, technology is a really amazing facilitator. It can, it helps us get places faster. It eases our workload. But I think what's really interesting and is on, I guess, the psychedelic track of thinking from, questioning assumptions or moving to first principles is, like, where are we going to as we develop these technologies and as we scale, right? Is it, like, what are we scaling? We were having the conversation yesterday, and, with the next project I'm working on, Outro, sometimes, like, how do we define technology? Like, I would argue that SSRIs, for example, are a technology, right? Antidepressants, SSRIs, SNRIs. And that was pharma's best way of scaling happiness. It's an easy molecule to produce and reproduce and get sent around the world, fulfilled by pharmacies. And I don't know the answer. It's a tough one. But what problem were they solving when they decided to build the technological solution that was SSRIs? Or did they have a solution and worked backwards towards a problem? And I think that's something I've thought a lot about while building Houston and building Outro. And I think that's one of the reasons why with Houston we focused a lot on facilitation of the microdosing experience. And actually there was one point in time where I was getting so many questions of people asking me, isn't it just placebo? This study came out from Imperial that shows it's just placebo. I think one of the most interesting things possible is to scale the placebo effect in a way. Every time somebody tracks a dose, they can set their intention, reflect in a different way, and personalize the experience every single time and see in the community feed other people that are microdosing, what their top intentions are, and really, along the lines of what we were talking about the other day, we might get into that, I guess, with the whole AI chatbot thing. But I think I don't know the answer. I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts in terms of, one, with technology, what are we scaling, especially in relation to psychedelics, and what we were talking about yesterday, and an opinion I have is, like why do we feel this need in society to get rid of suffering? And where are we going with our solutions? Because I feel like our suffering is what's shared, and that's how we connect. And I think that's one of the big problems with where we went with psychiatry and where we scaled, let's using that technology of SSRIs as an example again. We're like, oh no, this person's suffering. Like, you need to do something, and it's really good to numb that pain temporarily, but that's not a solution. That's not, I think, what needs to be scaled. So not precisely answering your question, I suppose, but I guess it's more looking at, like, it's kind of iterating on what are the we need to ask better questions, right? Like, what are we scaling to solve? What direction are we running in faster and faster as technology evolves more and more? And for me, it's connection, I would say, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
That was definitely a lively point yesterday when we were talking. So it is a big question. I mean, we're all so distracted, and we're distracted by technology, but so much of technology is being used to distract us. Yeah. I think that if we have the intention and use technology properly, we can connect more. We can be, more in touch with our humanity, but it's very easy to get lost in that, especially when it's being targeted specifically to have us get lost in it. One of the things that we kind of laughed about is that as much as I am, interested in precision, if I'm going to do mushrooms, I do it on a backpack. I get as far away from the world as I can. I leave everything behind. I have no electronics whatsoever and just walk around. I want to feel like a child of God in the natural world. That's what I do, but I think that we just need a lot of different tools, and we need a lot of different approaches for different people, because people are different. And one of the things that we've talked about is about opening up the insurance money to the billions of dollars of healthcare money that we could apply if we can create the tools that can become FDA approved. I think that you actually are probably developing an electronic tool that you might actually be able to get FDA approval for at a certain point, depending on what direction you go, both of you. Yeah. And so this is, I think, what it's going to mean to have tech platforms that actually enhance our humanity. I hope so, at least.
I mean,
Yeah, is that on? Yeah, okay. I really think that Albert Hoffman said psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers, and I think you could apply that to technology as a non-specific amplifier. It's a power tool, right? And being really conscientious about how we're using these tools. To your question about social connection, you like to go out into the wilderness. Some people like to sit in a maloca together with other people breathing and experiencing, this. We're pretty hardwired to want to connect. But, when we think about scaling and accessibility, everyone can't fly to Peru to do an ayahuasca journey, right? Everyone can't leave their home to be able to integrate. At Trip Psychedelics, we've begun hosting sharing groups with ketamine integration sharing groups in VR chat as avatars. And I was a little skeptical at first, like, are we going to be able to have an emotional connection in this space? And yes, we do. We're here in these avatars. I'm so straight-laced, so I'm there in my little business suit avatar, giving my talk. And, there's some guy that's a stick of butter that's there. And there's Ronald McDonald, and a cat. And, so I'm in this space and I'm looking around like, I don't know, this is kind of different than my, Maloka experience in South America, But the intimacy that was shared, as soon as people start talking and sharing with each other, there's this desire to connect. There's this shared field. And I'm a believer. I was really amazed at how well that can work. And of course, I'm thinking about all kinds of things like, we're doing a lot of studies on people that have terminal illness with psychedelics. These people aren't going to be able to fly to Peru to be able to do medicine, and they need medicine. They need to have peace around dying. We have another VR chat group that's on grief and dying, people sharing about that, and it's so intimate and so beautiful. So I say to my clients all the time, intention is everything. Intention is everything, right? So if we have the right intention, Trip Psychedelics, Trip is a heart-centered company. We are all about connection. If you can inform that resonance with everything that we create, can we help people connect to one another? And I think technology in its highest form can do that, right? And kind of in that same vein of talking about technology, we really need to look at what that term means. We tend to think about it that like pharmaceuticals or computers or AI, but technology is Stone Age tools, millions of years old. That was technology, right? We're hardwired also as beings to want to understand our consciousness. And so, someone a million years ago started drumming and noticed that helped them get into an expanded state of consciousness. And then, wow, technology tends to evolve and complexify and have this syntropic effect. So then next thing you know, they're combining drumming and singing. Wow, this is amazing. And then some grandmother creates ayahuasca by putting two plants together. God, now I can really, get to expanded states. What if I combine ayahuasca with drumming and singing? Whoa, And then you fast forward that to today and looking at using ketamine treatment with virtual reality and social VR. And that is a complexification of our desire to understand our consciousness, to understand why we're here, to understand each other. And I think that's really beautiful. And so that's what my vision is informing it with that intention.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. Throughout this, there's this thread of the positive implications of accessibility for these experiences, but also the thread brought up of the potential for disconnect. And there's this interesting nuance as we're exploring this expansion of consciousness and these tech tools and the context of psychedelics. Jeff, as you said, like when you take psychedelics, you just want to go be a child of God away in nature. Where is the bridge that we can build? Right now, we exist in instant gratification culture where right now, people are addicted to their phones and their laptops and just like plugged in. And with psychedelics, there is the hype machine that has built up about it being like the magic bullet of a pill or a mushroom that can solve all that impacts you. And there's this line of like in Western culture with like moving with tech towards gratification and towards being able to have efficiency with the stillness and softness of the psychedelic experience and that expansion of consciousness. So where is the balance, and what are your philosophies on that?
I'll just touch on something quickly. It's super related. I really love the bring up intentionality, and you can feel that in a person. You can also feel it in a company, and technology companies that actually really relate to psychedelics nowadays are, let's say, a Google or a Meta, right? Where do they make most of their money? It's off of our attention. So that's their main goal. I haven't been in the boardrooms of these companies, of course, but you look at an Apple, they make most of their money off the hardware that is used as a tool. As you're saying, it facilitates creativity, connection, work, what have you. Whereas the other major companies, their incentive is stealing your attention. And I think that intentionality is interesting, and interesting to think about in terms of how we develop these new technologies. What is the intention behind creating them, and how do we find that balance of being a sustainable business in this world where you need to make money to keep the lights on and grow and scale, and then also doing something that isn't, arguably predatory, and making sure that the reliance on the product itself is not the end. Like if you're thinking about, I brought it up again, and it's a little bit obvious that I'm not a big fan of them, but like SSRIs, long-term antidepressant use, you become reliant on it, and if you don't have it, then you will suffer, right? It's the intentionality of creating those technologies is taking that drug is the end, and that's what you need to feel better, rather than using them as a tool, and as you were talking about, Jeff, like a comprehensive treatment plan using different modalities to go to the end of feeling whole, feeling connected. And you're starting to see that in the psychedelic space where it's relevant in terms of the incentives behind venture-backed companies that ship ketamine, across the U.S., right? And you can feel it when you even just like look at the companies and how they operate, how they speak. You can tell the intentionality behind what they're doing, and a lot of it is, I mean, it's quite frank. It's creating longer LTV, right, lifetime value of the customers by giving them more ketamine. And so that's, I think, the intentionality is one of the biggest parts when we're thinking about finding balance. And it's not easy, but that's one of the most important parts of that intentionality, I believe, when you're actually thinking about scaling these technologies for the good of humanity, to be corny.
Yeah, no, I think that it really comes down to, for me, I love tech solutions, but I love them because they help me save time so that I can unplug and actually get to what really matters. You know, picking up the guitar, singing, working with the kids, teaching them music, or just going out for a walk, making sure I can see the sunset. These are really important things to get into any given day for me. And so if I can get my work done more quickly, if I can get those research papers pulled together more quickly, if I can cite those papers when I'm writing more quickly, I just get to get back to what really matters, really in the whole scheme of things. So I think it really does come down to staying. We all have to stay focused on what matters. You know, we really are the integrated being of body, mind, and spirit. And when we forget those three layers and don't honor them all at the same time, we can get lost. So I think tech platforms are amazing, and I'm very excited to be part of developing one, but we need to stay focused on what really matters.
So with the context of intentionality and having this element of focus towards being able to guide towards like everyone being able to work on what they care about and having more spaciousness in time, I want to open it up towards AI and what's developing with ChatGPT and other tools and thinking about the therapeutic space. So for those who are not aware, as an example, there's a telehealth platform called Coco that in January, without informing their 4,000 patients, integrated ChatGPT for virtual telehealth and therapeutic services, and they were tracking whether the patients had more resonance with the human responses versus the AI-generated responses. And at a certain point, they let their clientele know that it was AI-generated, but it was prior to that, the clients preferred to have the AI responses over the human responses, and everything was fine until they found out that it was AI, and then it was upheaval. So there's ethical considerations with informed consent, obviously, but we are getting towards this nuanced space in the development of AI and machine learning programs towards this question of how AI is going to influence therapy broadly and psychedelic-assisted therapy, and if there is this philosophical point where like, if we can just empathetically resonate with AI, do we even need the human in the process? So what are your thoughts on that?
I'll take that one. That's so fascinating, you know, and thinking about ethics, not only to provide people accessibility and connection, right? So this chat bot would be amazing for people that can't afford a therapist, but I'm also thinking about the ethical considerations of all the therapists out there and keeping humans employed, right? What are we going to do with this huge, what Yuval Harari calls useless class of humans, right? That AI will replace. It's a fascinating thing. And, you know, the magnitude of these technologies, it cannot be overestimated. It's huge. It's a big deal. And we need to lean into the ethical considerations with eyes wide open. I think about it, you know, I'm a Jungian originally, and I think about it from a Jungian perspective of this idea that, you know, the child that we've created, technology, AI, is now individuating from us and taking off in this other direction and wants to be, you're not the boss of me kind of thing, where it's starting to, become maybe self-aware. And have we been good parents to this thing that we've created, right? When your kids are 18, you don't get to tell them what to do anymore. They get to do what they want now. And so then as a parent, you're thinking, oh, I hope that I've taught them everything that they need to know now. And this is where we're at with AI. Like, have we programmed these things to be ethical? Have we put in enough energy to parent this thing that we've created? I mean, think about this, is so mind-blowing to me. We used to ask other humans questions and wanted, information from other humans. We're now asking something that we created to tell us how to understand ourselves. People are typing into Chat GPT, what is consciousness? We made this thing, and now we're asking it to tell us about ourselves. We're asking machines to tell us about ourselves. That algorithms, it's wild, right? 200 years ago, no one was talking about living in a simulation. No one had that theory. Now this is a common theory. The thing that we created now, we're believing in so much that it's replacing us as parents. It's pretty wild. It's a wild thing, and I don't think there's any stopping it at this point, right? So have we done our job as good parents? I guess that's the question.
Brandon, you brought something up yesterday that I think was really fascinating. It's something that really defines humanity, I think, which is the capacity to suffer. That empathy requires, at some level, the capacity to suffer oneself so that one knows what it actually means in another. And that this is not something currently, at least that we believe, is built into AI, and that's why there's something specifically missing in terms of AI's humanity. And I think we also got into another layer up, which is that if you look at the nature of agape as per C.S. Lewis in The Four Loves, that agape is actually pain, is psychic pain, is the capacity to really fully understand what this world is versus what it could be, and to feel the pain of that distance. And that if we lose touch with that, we essentially lose our humanity. In fact, it's a bit intense, but if you ever want to hear C.S. Lewis, I mean, it actually literally gives me chills. He says that that's what damnation is. It's not something that's done to you. It's something that you do to yourself when you're so scared of pain that you bind your heart and essentially hide yourself from God. It's really intense, and I think we really are on the cusp of extremely intense questions that we're going to be having to answer about who we are.
Yeah, I promised I wouldn't bring up Westworld, so I'll just.
No, please do. You said you would.
Where do I even start? How much time? No, it's fascinating. One of my favorite quotes is, I believe it's in The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. He says, "I maintain that hell is the inability to love." And I think it's very similar to the C.S. Lewis quote you mentioned, and the capacity to share suffering. Also, like other light reading being Dante's Inferno, right? One of the levels of purgatory is everybody has their eyes plucked out and they have to huddle together. And that's it at the end of the day, I think. It's what we're all doing. How do we scale that? Let's get a good technology. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with Houston. I don't think, like I said, technology won't be the end. Like, there's a lot of references today. There's this show I really, really like called *Halt and Catch Fire*. I don't know if anybody's seen it. It's very underrated. And it's about like the birth of this is super related. It's about the birth of the personal computing era. It started actually in Austin. Wow, a lot of synchronicities. Started in Austin. And then by season 4, they start to get into the birth of the World Wide Web, the first internet browsers. And one of the characters, Joe McMillan, who's kind of modeled after like a Steve Jobs, John McAfee type, he's trying to convince a young, despondent, lost his dream engineer to get back in the ring and build a personal computer that competes with the IBM. And he gets really excited. He's like, "Gordon, computers aren't the thing. They're the thing that gets us to the thing." And I feel bad for AI if it gains the capacity to suffer, because that stuff's not that fun. So I don't know if we'll ever, the end thing will be a connection with AI, but if that AI can facilitate connections with each other, then I think that is very powerful. And then there's a whole bunch of other questions in terms of why are there still 40-hour work weeks, 5 days a week, right? Like, in theory, with all the productivity gains, you should be, going up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, more art, more music, more connection, more reading, more creation, that pyramid inverts to self-transcendence, which isn't talked about a lot, but there's a confluence of factors, I think, and it's fun to try to solve seemingly unsolvable problems. So it keeps me in a job. Right?
Well, I think with this, we're orienting towards why this is the beginning of a discourse and how it can continue to expand. And we'd love to open it up to a handful of questions from the audience if anyone would like to come and speak. And thank all of you for being a part of this. And my request, how much time do we have for Q&A? All right, with technically 6 minutes, my hope is for every person who's asking a question to just ask the question.
Cool.
Yes.
What are some of the ways we can measure progress towards greater awareness and access, keeping in mind modern, informed, ethical levels of safety, efficacy, and control? What are the things that are going to accelerate us or constrain us?
Well, definitely, being somewhat square in approach, FDA approval process is extremely exacting about whether something works or doesn't work. You have to be very specific about your question, and you have to be very specific about your parameters, and you have to actually show real data. So this is this is a level of discipline that I think is very important in the work. I think there are a lot of other ways to do that as well, and I think that you will both be gathering data as well in other ways. So we need to be answering these questions and gathering data.
Yeah, to underscore that, I think it's important what questions you are asking, right? Because that informs the direction of where the data is going. We tend to forget that, right? The question is very important.
One recommendation I have, there's a documentary called Coded Bias, talking about how AI algos are mostly trained on very particular subsets of humanity. And if you want to engage in asking meaningful questions to increase accessibility, you have to include all communities that are going to be impacted by the development of this technology, not have it limited to middle class, upper class, white men.
Hi. There's a very relevant question brought up earlier about what are we actually scaling? And I think we're very good at trying to scale accessibility of treatments to people, but the backfill of that is scaling the willingness of people to access those treatments. Antidepressants are so successful because people are lazy, right? And it's a mental health care delivery for the TikTok lifestyle. And so we can build all the optimized treatments we want, but how do we make people, and the principal question is, can technology, or how is technology helping to increase people's willingness to actually do the work and access these and use these effective treatments?
Yeah, I would say it's a confluence of factors in terms of all realms of society. Like when I worked for Novo Nordisk, I lived in Copenhagen for 3 years. That was really interesting to live in Copenhagen and the way they operate, right? They really make the investment in building bike lanes throughout the city and good food. They've reached that stage where they're like, we're so bored, we need to make this chair look amazing. And it's like almost in their DNA to do these things, and that's where it's not easy at all, but it takes so many different facets of culture and society working together in a not siloed way to actually answer that question and help people, I don't know, move up that hierarchy of needs in a way you're talking about and drop the quick fixes in a way.
I've thought a lot about scaling with, to your point, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a lot of my patients would never go to an underground facilitator to do psychedelic medicine at someone's house. You know, that's just so outside of what they would consider. But, you know, Schedule 3 medicine administered by a medical provider and a licensed psychotherapist with research data backing it is something that they are open to. So I've never felt like, you know, it's this underground versus above ground or licensed versus, you know, I think that it's not an either or, but an and. The more expansive we can be about having different avenues to access these medicines, the better, in my opinion. So I hope that kind of addresses your question, yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Lucky me. So I love the term precision psychedelics. I've definitely been in some ayahuasca ceremonies where some people could have benefited from skipping the GI tract. But I wonder, are we missing out on the ensemble effect of a lot of these chemicals? For instance, if we extract psilocybin from mushrooms, we're missing out on all the other related chemicals. And is there a way that we can have a more holistic experience of these psychedelics? Or are there any concerns about pushing too hard on the precision aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it really comes back to the both and rather than either or. I think that the community model, the decriminalization model, I am all for. I think there's nobody should ever go to jail or have a record for these kinds of drugs, and they need to be safely available in forms that people know what they are, especially now that we have this white power problem. I mean, people are dying left and right. It's unbelievable. We lost 100,000 people last year in the opioid crisis. It's as lethal as World War II was for the American military. It's that bad, and there's no end in sight. So I think that it's important to decriminalize, and I think that will make a lot of that available. But I do also think that if we're going to use these in a medical office where time frames are important, reimbursement is important, this is just reality, that the precision is very important. Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Lucky me. Okay. Since we opened it up to talking about science fiction, there's a series of science fiction novels by a guy named Ian M. Banks, if anybody's read them, called the Culture series, that talks a lot about AI. In that series, there is a regulation in place in the culture, which is the society, that any AI of a beyond rudimentary capability must be sentient. Like, it is not allowed to think and feel like a human does. I guess my question is, do you have any thoughts on how much of these questions we grapple with about ethics of AI are framed around AI as it currently stands, this alien thing that can't think and feel as we do? How much of that may still even be necessary when we get to a stage where it's no different than a very intelligent human being? When AI is as human as we are, will the questions around morality be the same, or what do you think the questions around the morality of AI will be?
Oh, I think this is super fascinating, because as human as we are, we're like, what does that mean? You know, like, what's the standard? Oh, you're human. You know, like, we still don't even know what that is, right? So, but it's super fun to think about.
Sorry, I think being human is a lot like being cool. You don't necessarily know what it is, but you know what it's not.
Yes. By
so
taking
great.
away, that's really, or I guess Sam Harris calls, if there's anything like there is to be a bat, then a bat has consciousness. I get all my information on this from Westworld, so that's what my answer is going to revolve around. I don't know if you guys have a better response.
I'm thinking about kind of the inverse, how interesting it is that humans, we are so hardwired to empathize and connect with one another, that we have all this empathy and compassion for the AI, and we project our own consciousness onto everything else, right? And so there's no way for us to know, because we can't help but project ourselves onto it. So, you know, people falling in love with their chatbot, there's no way to know if that chatbot is having the feelings as well, because we are so good at adapting and projecting ourselves onto things around us, right? I'm sure that in reality, that consciousness of the AI is completely different than, you know, if you look at octopuses, they have a totally different, they're incredibly intelligent, and their intelligence is totally different than ours, right? And I imagine it's something like that. Like the sentience that it has is not a simian-based sentience that we have, right? It's the lens. It's like, in my view, consciousness is everywhere. It's everything. And each vessel that interprets consciousness, it has its own inherent qualities. And so humans have their own inherent qualities of how we make sense of consciousness, right? We are like a computer. We're not the person at the computer, right? That's the consciousness. And you know, octopus has a totally different thing. Even though it's translating consciousness, it comes through itself in its own algorithms, if you will, or its own being. So I'm sure that AI is conscious, but its consciousness is probably very different than ours, right? And we engage with it and we project with it, and maybe that's what matters, right? Is our projection.
Yeah, I like that. Like you just know, I guess. And if you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter if that's what you know, I suppose. Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming, and thanks to Jeff and Sunny and Brandon for being a part of this.